The 3rd of December 2012 marked 1 year since Mr. Donald Ramotar was sworn in as President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. It is my pleasure on the public interest to be chatting with the opposition leader, Brigadier the Honorable David Granger, who will, in a nutshell, tell you his thoughts on the 1 year presidency of Mr. Donald Ramotar. Thank you very much and welcome, Mr. Granger.
Thank you, Malaika. I had the privilege of meeting the President-elect on the 1st of December 2011. In fact, the Alliance for Change presidential candidate at that time, Mr. Ramotar, and myself from a Partnership for National Unity, and Mr. Donald Ramotar from the PPP met in the Parliament building on the 1st of December, and he was sworn in 2 days later, as you know. What has the year brought? Well, it has brought disappointment. We expected after that first meeting that the People's Progressive Party Civic Administration, and of course Don Ramotar, who didn't have the baggage of Bharat Jagdeo, would usher in an age of cooperation. We had a unique situation. We had a National Assembly unlike anything that we've ever had in Guyana before. We had a National Assembly in which the opposition, that is the Partnership for National Unity and Alliance for Change together, had 33 seats, and the government only had 32. This is a situation that was made for consensus, made for cooperation. And we felt that, the Guyanese people would at last be able to see a government, both sides of the house, working in their interests. But from the word go, the PPP was back to its old tricks. Instead of cooperating, there was confrontation. One of my first requests was that we set up a tripartite budget committee, so that the three parties, PPP, APNU, and AFC, would sit together and work on producing a budget that was in interest of the whole people. Because we represented the majority and the PPP represented the minority, and together we felt we would have been able to craft a budget. The budget is the most important instrument for planning the economic development of a country. Naturally, it's one of the most important measures to be brought before the National Assembly. But instead of cooperation, from the first day there was confrontation. We expected Mr. Ramotar would have been able to use his clout, he's the president, to ensure that his Minister of Finance, Dr. Ashley Singh, would sit down with our Shadow Minister of Finance, Mr. Carl Granger, and the nominee from the Alliance for Change and work out a budget, but it did not happen. And unfortunately, we started on the wrong foot. The PPP after that resisted every move that the opposition tried to make. The next big confrontation, of course, was the election of the Speaker. When the PPP had the majority, the PPP elected the Speaker. Now the opposition has the majority, the opposition elected the Speaker. What's so wrong about that? And then we had a battle over the composition of the committees in the National Assembly. And by the 1st of December, I had been taken to court 4 times by the Attorney General. And this is symptomatic of the poisoned atmosphere that the PPP intransigence has generated in the National Assembly. Instead of sitting down and working with us, from the word go, we got the impression that the PPP felt that nothing had changed, that it was still the executive. They went ahead and produced a cabinet, they nominated a cabinet entirely made up of PPP. We were not consulted. And so the story went. For the entire year, it has been winner takes all, which the PPP thought they won. But in fact, the people have no confidence in them. In fact, the opposition has the majority, and the PPP has, although they set up a tripartite process of discussion, that is sterile. It is not producing the results that the people expect. So, in evaluating Ramotar's first year, I would say it is one of disappointment. And he obviously has brought nothing new to the presidency. He obviously has not been able to ensure that the difficulties that the country faced during the Jagdeo era, for example, the domination of the state media, nothing has really changed under Mr. Ramotar. It's been a dreadful year for governance, and on the other hand, it's been a good year for cooperation between the Alliance for Change and APNU, because we have had to sit down and work with each other every time we go to the National Assembly. APNU alone comprises 5 parties: the Guyana Action Party, the Justice for All Party, the National Front Alliance, Working People's Alliance, and the People's National Congress Reform. So we have set up structures inside of APNU to ensure that there's consensus among all 5 parties. We've also set up a process with the Alliance for Change to ensure that we consult with each other. But the PPP is a very hard nut to crack, and things could have gone much better if Mr. Ramotar was more flexible, and if instead of introducing measures unilaterally, for example the budget, we would have been able to sit down and give the Guyanese people the quality of governance they deserve.
Now, it is thought by many that Guyana is currently on pause, obviously because Mr. Ramotar seems bent on following in the footsteps of his predecessor, Mr. Jagdeo. How long can we survive in this state? And that is really if you agree that Guyana has been placed on pause.
I don't agree that it's been placed on pause. The Westminster system, and in Guyana we have a hybrid system. We have a presidential system plus the parliamentary system. In this sense, the president is not a member of the National Assembly, although in the definition of our constitution he's a member of parliament. He's not there to witness the debates, but his ministers are there. They continue to advance measures to do government business. If we were in pause, the country would be brought to a halt. So we're not in pause, and we are moving ahead. But what has happened is that there is greater scrutiny of government business. And this came to light, of course, at 2 levels. One is at the level of the committees, because the majority has taken control of the important committees, which is normal. When the PPP was the majority, it had control. And also, we now have a situation in which government measures are subject to more scrutiny, because we have made the PPP accountable for the first time in 20 years. They now have to explain. The ministers have to answer questions. So we're not on pause at all. The PPP has become very timid because they cannot ride roughshod over the National Assembly. But we are moving ahead, and as I said, I have been sued. I've been brought before the court 4 times this year, all about 2 important principles. And the first principle is whether the National Assembly, as long as it obeys the Constitution, whether the National Assembly is sovereign, or is it subject to the executive branch? Of course the answer is no, we are not subject to the executive branch. The National Assembly or the legislative branch makes the laws, and the executive branch executes the laws. Similarly, the judiciary interprets the law. The judiciary doesn't make the law. The judiciary cannot tell the National Assembly what to do. But once a law is made, the judiciary could interpret the law. The judiciary is not a judge. It interprets the law. So we have succeeded this year in asserting the authority of the National Assembly. And it is no longer a sort of little department of the executive branch. In the past, we had some severe problems in the National Assembly. Commonwealth expert Sir Michael Davies came to this country 7 years ago in 2005, and he wrote a most scathing report about the way the National Assembly was being manipulated by the office of the President and the way it was being run by Mr. Ralph Ramkaran, who was then the Speaker. And for the first time, members of the opposition can breathe fresh air in the National Assembly, because they have to be heard, and our supporters, the 175,000 persons who voted for APNU and AFC, know that their votes counted, and their votes will continue to influence the way legislation is passed in the National Assembly.
Okay, I'm happy that you mentioned Mr. Karan, but before we come to him, Mr. Donald Ramotar seemed to have adopted a practice that we see many officials, many PPP officials adopting, whereby they continue to say, to try to compare the PPP government with the situation as it relates to the PNC government that would have been more than 20 years ago. And they keep holding this as a crutch to say, well, we have improved in certain areas. It's much better than under the PNC government. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's not a very useful way of arguing. For example, the PNC, in coalition with United Force, took over from the PPP in 1964. The roads were bad, the country is bankrupt, you know, the population was divided, having come out of a near civil war. But, you know, every administration must be an improvement on the previous one. I mean, our government, our party at that time, introduced a lot of housing schemes so that the people could be better housed. It introduced free education. There were lots of changes. But it is the purpose of the government to make changes. We improved the seawalls, we improved the highway system, we built the Suez-Linden Highway, but we don't go on cranking up the same old organ year after year. Every government collects revenue, so there must be advances, you know, from year to year. So it is not helpful for the People's Progressive Party to continue to talk about what the country was like in 1990 or 1992. They have collected billions of dollars in revenue, and what we are seeing is simply a government attempting to do what every government does, that is, make the lives of the people better. But the PPP has had some grievous failures over the last 20 years. Never in my life have I witnessed the type of criminal violence that we saw in Guyana between 2000 and maybe 2008. So there have been lots of dangerous situations, there have been lots of setbacks, and I do not think that the average person in Guyana, the poor person, the common people, I don't think the common people are happier now after 20 years than at the beginning of the PPP era. So it is a waste of time for the PPP to compare what is happening in 2012 with the situation that existed in this country in 1992. They're supposed to build schools. They're supposed to build roads. They're supposed to pay civil servants better. These are obligations. And what I feel is that some of the obligations have not been fulfilled.
Okay. All right. In reading a recent, what I would call an evaluation of the PPP's, Mr. Donald Ramotar's 1 year in office, it became quite clear that it would have been legal under our constitution for the minority government to appoint a minister from the majority opposition. Now, do you believe that Guyana would have been probably in a better situation today if that had happened?
I've heard talk about that. It is a formula, it is an option for shared governance, but a Partnership for National Unity has never made a deal with the PPP to get seats in the cabinet. We haven't even discussed it at the shadow cabinet among or within the executive committee of APNU or the leadership council of the APNU. We would have felt that if there was an interest in shared governance, that Mr. Ramotar would have come up maybe in December 2011 and to say, well, look, this is our formula. We have gone through 20 difficult years. We are proposing a government of national unity, and these are the recommendations we would like to make. Nothing of the sort ever came from the PPP. I'm not removing it from the table altogether. But if we were made an offer, we'd consider it. But we have not sought office. What we have sought to do is to fulfill our mandate, that is to scrutinize government. and to pass laws which are in the interest of our people. And I think that we could do a better job if the PPP was prepared to listen to the recommendations from the opposition side. For example, in the field of public security, this has led to one of the biggest confrontations we've had for the entire year. That is, on the 6th of December, soon after Ramotar was sworn in, Mr. Ramotar was sworn in as president, several of our supporters were shot in a most cruel fashion. And that was one of the first communications I had with Ramotar, telling him to convene a commission of inquiry. I sent letters and dossiers all around the world to the United Nations and to Commonwealth and the CARICOM about that shooting incident, and we got no justice, we got no relief, we got no satisfaction from the PPP. Unfortunately for the PPP, they missed the opportunity to correct the damage that that shooting incident did on the 6th of December. And again, the anniversary was just this week, yesterday. And more mistakes were committed, particularly at Linden and on the 18th of July and at Agricola Village. So if we had a government that was prepared to sit down with the opposition and say, look, we have a public security problem. What do you recommend? What advice would you give? We're not asking to become or to have one of our numbers appointed as Minister of Home Affairs. We're asking for measures to be implemented to make Guyana safe. We want to see an end to piracy. We want to see an end to banditry. We want to see an end to smuggling. We want to see an end to drug trafficking. We want to see an end to these horrendous traffic accidents. We want to see an end to domestic violence. And obviously the PPP hasn't listened to us, and they haven't made any changes. So the clash that came about after the 18th of July about Rohi's performance was all about performance. It was all about competence. It was all about public security. It's not about Mr. Rohi as a person. We know we did not elect him, so we cannot remove him from the National Assembly. We know that we didn't appoint him, so the resolution that was passed at the end of July was all about the president revoking his appointment. What we said is this country is unsafe. And Rohi, as the minister at that time, for the last 6 years, has to accept responsibility for the lack of security and the lack of human safety. So we are not using that as a whip or as a wedge to get into the cabinet. We don't want to get into the cabinet under those conditions. We want a certain quality of governance, and we are not seeing that quality of governance. So I don't think any of my shadow ministers has ever raised the issue about getting into the cabinet. And it's not a non-issue as far as APNU is concerned at this point in time.
Okay. All right. In going through Mr. Ramkaran's evaluation of the 1 year, there are a lot of figures here and percentages and stuff that may confuse the public at large. How accurate would you say Mr. Ramkaran's evaluation has been?
His evaluation is very badly flawed. Mr. Ramkaran grew up in the People's Progressive Party. His father was a minister on the Chedi Jagan, one of the most trusted ministers, I think. Used to call him Boise Ramkaran. And so I would say his whole life has been in the PPP. He has not changed. Although there was a quarrel earlier this year and he left the PPP, that is a matter for him. But the evaluation, unfortunately, was not very insightful. A lot of the facts and figures were about ethnicity, about the size of the Indian population compared to the size of the Amerindian population, the African population, and so on. He seemed to feel that one of the reasons for the loss of, if we can call it that, the loss of the election by the PPP was because of the demographic shift that is taking place, and he predicts that the Indian Guyanese population would soon be 40%, which of course means that the rest of the population is 60%. And he is devising strategies to capture other ethnic groups. He misses the point completely. The elections in 2011 were about quality of life, were about human security, were about education, were about jobs. I don't think people voted race. The poorest people, the common people, the people in the trade unions, the people in rural areas came out in support of a partnership for national unity because we held out the promise of a good life for them. So I think Ramkaran's analysis was designed to help the PPP to engineer their way back into a majority. It wasn't a national analysis. It wasn't concerned with governance. It didn't say, well, look, there's a security problem. Let us solve the security problem. There's a problem of poverty. Let us introduce poverty alleviation. I was very disappointed in the article because one would have thought that having been Speaker for maybe 10 years or more of the National Assembly, he would have come with a different worldview. But it's still narrow PPP view. The Indian vote, the African vote, you know. I don't think that's the issue at all. I would have thought that you would have spoken about the governance. The fact that at the time of independence, 46 years ago, we had a constitution which prescribed that an ombudsman be appointed. The PNC, when it was in government, faithfully appointed an ombudsman so that citizens could make complaints against members of the executive. No, the ombudsman is gone. The office is locked down. For about 6 or 7 years, there's been no ombudsman. I thought Mr. Ramkaran, being an attorney at law, would have come across in support of the re-establishment of the institutions which would keep our country a law-abiding country. But he missed the mark. Okay.
All right. I know earlier I asked you about whether you believe that Guyana is on pause or not. Well, I must ask you this because there's also a fear out there that, okay, we're at the end of 2012. 2013, do we look out for the same kinds of things happening beginning with the budget? Do you think that Mr. Nandlal will probably have the same attitude, the Attorney General that is, in terms of running to the court every time something happens in Parliament that he doesn't agree with? Where do you see us, Guyana, December 2013?
Well, on the one hand, it's public knowledge that there have been rumors are public, of a snap election. So we might be in different positions a year from now. I do believe that the people are fed up with the PPP, and it would be a serious error to call for snap elections. We have still got the local government elections to be held. Local government elections haven't been held for 18 years, and by next year to be 19 years. So it would be a terrible mistake on the part of the government to attempt to go into national elections without going first into regional elections. Municipal and local government elections. So I believe those elections would be a sort of barometer of public opinion. And it is my strong view, and I certainly would use the clout of APNU in the National Assembly to insist on local government elections. Now, whether the PPP can change or not, I do believe that the indications so far are not favorable. I do believe that it would be good for the PPP to call in the opposition and sit down and work out a modus vivendi so that the bills could be crafted in a manner that is favorable to the opposition as well as the government, and that we can have an easier time in the National Assembly. I don't see it happening. I would like to see it. I have never refused to have talks with Mr. Ramotar, and I will continue to keep the door open to meeting with AFC, and I look forward to an era of cooperation rather than confrontation.
Finally, Brigadier David Granger. 1 year after the people of this nation would have let their voices be heard that, look, we are no longer interested in this winner-taking-all in the PPP governance. Why should the public stay with and continue to rally around a partnership for national unity?
We are the best thing that's happened to Guyana for 20 years. We represent the coming together of several parties and other social partners. We represent the promise of national unity. APNU is the only party that really has NU in its name, national unity, and we are committed to that. The public came to trust us. We ran the shortest campaign of all. We were only established in July 2011, and we had to compete as a new entity in the elections of November 2011. The AFC was in existence much longer, and the PPP was in existence for over 60 years. But I was very encouraged by the support of the common people because they saw here, these people are going to look after our interests. They're going to care about jobs for our young people. They are going to look at the education system, and we were the ones who came out in support of better financing for the University of Guyana. We are going to look at the issues of public security. We are the ones who supported the fishermen who had been made victims of the pirates. We came out in support of the victims of banditry in the hinterland. We stood up for women who had been beaten or brutalized by their husbands. So all in all, the people have had a year in which they could have looked critically at a partnership for national unity, and they came to us and said, we like what you're doing in the National Assembly. You all are standing up for us. This is what we voted for you for. So I would say that the people have kept faith with us. It's only been a year. They know that we are the majority, well, together with the AFC, but we're not the government. So they don't expect us to go and build roads and fix the schools. But they know the government is not the majority. And they know that if we continue to keep pressuring the government, they can have a good life. And this country could be way ahead of the situation that we are in at present. But it has not happened. So the people are still with us, and in increasing numbers. Some people were suspicious. They didn't know what we stood for. And I was very disappointed that we only had a 72% turnout at the national elections. I am confident that if the extra 130,000 people or so had voted, the results would have been very different. And I am convinced that there will be fewer people standing on the sidelines the next time elections come around, because they see now that it is possible for the voices of the people to be heard, for their votes to be counted, and for them to get a better life through a partnership for national unity.
Thank you very much, Brigadier the Honorable David Granger, Opposition Leader. This has been The Public Interest, and we were focusing on Mr. Donald Ramotar's one-year presidency. Until next time, I am Malika Ramsey. Thanks for joining us.